Welcome to the Black Voice Hertfordshire Community Meeting. Our speakers tonight are Kwazi Wezu Asomane, Catherine Ward, Sam McKinday and Michaela Clark. To find out more about the Black Voice Hertfordshire Community Meeting, please view the chat now. To note our house rules, please view the chat now. Speakers, collaborations, volunteers. We need you. Email us at blackvoiceletchworth@gmail.com. To find out more about Black Voice Letchworth, please view the chat now. Our two main aims are to fundraise for the UK's first Black History Museum, Library and School of Cultural and Creative Arts and to support the Black community. Please note our socials in the chat now. Our online services include Kids Gaming Group, our BVL radio show, Funky Ma, our parent and child fitness class, Mama Sugar Shakes, our 0 to 5 preschool program, the Black History School, mental health support, legal advice support, the accountability dossier, the Al Kubalan Festival, Hate Crime Reporting Centre, employment support, computer and internet support, BVL magazine, short films and documentaries, online courses, private function entertainment, online Saturday events monthly. Please note our donation information in the chat. Save the date, Friday the 30th of July is the next Black Voice Hertfordshire Community Meeting, working together for change. Our Black Voice Letchworth team welcomes you and we hope you enjoyed the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the monthly Black Voice Hertfordshire Community Meeting for June. Firstly, we have some updates. So last time, the people who were here in may remember that we had Police and Crime Commissioner David Lloyd attend, and we posed some follow-up questions, and these were his answers. So the first question is, where can we acquire a copy of the Community Safety and Criminal Justice Plan in Herts/the Police and Crime Plan noted in the meeting? And we've been given a link, and we have been told that this is on the Herts PCC website and that there is a statutory duty to publish a police and crime plan within 1 year of a PCC election. And the OPCC will shortly be undertaking extensive public consultation to inform the direction and content of that plan, and that BVL would of course be welcome to contribute views and suggestions. The next question that BVL asked was, where can we acquire a copy of the Stop and Search Scrutiny Panel annual report? And we have once again been given a link to this and been told that there are 5 years worth of annual reports available to view, and that the panel are just in the process of completing last year's report, which should be signed off this month and available on the website in July. And we are also able to view on the website, on the webpage, minutes from the previous meetings. So that was the answer to that question. Next, we asked, where can we acquire a copy of the complaints procedure? Once again, we've been given a link for that. And then we asked, where can we find out who the members are of the independent scrutiny panel for Stop and Search, allow within the 2 chief inspectors from the different districts? And the answer to that was, on the PCC website, a list of panel members are shown. The OPCC have recently done some recruitment, so there are another 4 or 5 to be added shortly. Chief inspectors from the districts are not invited to every meeting, although we do always ask an inspector or chief inspector from the crime reduction community safety team. On the website, you will see minutes from the previous meetings, which will show if a chief inspector was in attendance and which district they were from. In those meetings, the panel will have focused their review of officer records on that district or districts only. In other meetings, they will look at records from the whole county. The information on the Stop and Search panel has been provided by Sarah Miles, who is the OPCC's Criminal Justice Policy and Research Manager. She has added that the Stop and Search scrutiny panel have not been able to do any community engagement over the past year due to the pandemic, but are really keen to do more going forward. And the panel has suggested that maybe they could join a future Black Voice Letchworth, I'm presuming they mean a Black Voice Hertfordshire meeting, to discuss more about what the panel could do. Once COVID restrictions are lifted further, Sarah has also suggested that she should also look to hold a panel meeting in Letchworth with which the community were invited to. They could hear the conversations the panel are having when scrutinising records, see some body-worn video footage, give their thoughts and ask questions. And then we've been given the contact details to Sarah Miles to discuss these suggestions. Next, we asked, what can BVL do to aid the Police and Crime Commissioner's efforts to support the Black community? And we've been told David expresses his thanks for the offer of help. He's organising a meeting with Clive Saunders, who attended the last meeting, following their introduction at the BVL event, and hopes to discuss with him how they can work more closely. And finally, we asked, what can he do to aid BVL's efforts on reducing the rate of arrests of Black people in Hertfordshire? And the response to that was, whilst there may not be a simple response to reducing the arrest rate, David acknowledges that it starts with dialogue, and that is why he's reaching out to you and others for support. So those were all the answers that we received from the Police and Crime Commissioner. I will post the links in the chat that I mentioned if anyone asks for them. So back to tonight. We are pleased to be hosting many leaders in the community as well as members of the public. We also extend our gratitude to the speakers that we have tonight, including Kwesi Owusu Azomanning from CCR UK, who will be talking about working in the Black community and outside, Catherine Ward from Unison, who will be talking about employment rights and racial discrimination at work, Sam McKinday, PhD, who will be talking about the importance and benefits of teaching Black history in schools, and Michaela Clark, BA Hons, who will be telling us 20 things a council can do to support the Black community. Before we begin, here are our house rules. Please remain muted at all times, obviously apart from when you're giving a contribution. Please use the virtual Zoom hands up button to give notification that you would like to contribute, or write your question in the chat box where Will will pick them up. Due to the specific nature of this space, please refrain from using any and all known and unknown ethnic group acronyms and words. Please wait for a contribution to end before you contribute. Raised voices over a contribution is not permitted. Please do not swear or use foul language. And please place all contact information, events, projects, etc. of your organisation that you wish to share with us in the chat. Black Voice Letchworth is on many social media platforms. Please come and connect with us. We are on Facebook, Tumblr, Pinterest, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn under the name Black Voice Letchworth. On Snapchat and Twitter with the username @BlackVoiceL. And we have a website at www.blackvoiceletchworth.com. Our contact number is 07581 720032, and our emails are blackvoiceletchworth@gmail.com and bvlinquiries@gmail.com. All of the places where you can find us online will be posted into the chat. A link to a form where you can provide feedback about Black Voice Hertfordshire community meetings will also be in the chat. If you don't receive our reminder emails for Black Voice Hertfordshire meetings, a form where you can sign up to our mailing list will also be in the chat. If you would like to donate, our PayPal is blackvoiceletchworth@gmail.com, and that information will also be put into the chat. So now I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Kwesi, who's going to be talking about working in the Black community and outside. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us join your community. And it's a great pleasure to be here with you all. Just time check. How long have we got? I think about 10 minutes, right? For each slot? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we've prepared some slides for you, and we'll sort of give you an overview of what systemic coaching is about, and then we'll bring it into real world in terms of some of the work we do, the teams we coach, the leaders, the systems, the organizations, and bring it to life a bit. So I will share my screen, and then hopefully the power of is the screen still visible? I can hopefully, yeah, wonderful. I see some comments. Brilliant. Okay, so I'll go through everything and then we'll talk about who we are at the end, because I think it's more about you as a system, as a community, than us as who we are. So we'll talk to you about organizations and relationship systems coaching, OSC. We thought the better way to really connect and share this information with you is talk to you about the principles that really underpins and underlines this, which is relationship systems intelligence, so RSI. And then we'll go to, so what is RSI? Starts with the way I sort of interpret it really at the core is the ability to work really skillfully with emotional aspects of all levels of relationships. And that's very key. Not one aspect of a relationship, but at all levels of relationship. And that includes me, the individual, the other person that I'm in relationship with. And we'll explore and talk about what that means. A group, like us right now, or a whole. By whole, it's really connected to a group with the same purpose. That's the essence, and that's the core of what at the center of RSI. It's a human systems dynamic piece, and it's the ability to really read and understand with intentionality, and that's important. So having intentionality to interact with the dynamics of the system or the human relationships that you are part of is very, very important part of what RSI is about. And this one here, relationship systems intelligence, it goes beyond what we typically know as emotional intelligence and social intelligence. It transcends beyond this, and not to exclude, this is not mutually exclusive, because emotional intelligence and social intelligence is really, really part of how systems react and interact, and how dynamics really show up when you put two people or more together. But relationship system intelligence really builds on this and really transcends it and encapsulates it. And then to cap it off, we talk about revealing within RSI and the work we do, revealing a system to itself. And in that, it's really what that means is bringing to light what is either marginalized, what is trying to emerge, right? What is hidden sometimes, what is dominant, which might be very obvious at times and screaming in our faces, bringing all of that to light in order to gain really an awareness of this so that we can work with it. Because if we don't bring it to light, we cannot work with it, right? And it's about how we do that in a safe way, in a safe environment, right? So that's the kind of the components part of relationship systems intelligence. And we'll go more deeper into the 5 principles. We'll start with one. One talks about accessing the system's entity, right? And when we talk about system, we're talking about two or more, so systems of relationships, right? Two or more people, right, with the same, with a purpose, with a common purpose, right? So, for example, myself and my wife, we're in a system, we're in a relationship, we're married. Our purpose is a married couple with children, with an ambition. There is a purpose for this group, right? You're a system made of people, and there's a common purpose that brings you together. So that makes you a system. And each system, each relationship system, has its own unique identity or personality. So sometimes you might have a feeling of going from one team to another, and you might feel very different. Sometimes it's in the same organization, and you go from one room or one session to another, and it will feel very different, right? So that is the essence of what this is trying to say, and it's right. That those systems are unique and different in its own right. Two, we talk about hearing, seeing, and feeling the system. That every person, every member of that relationship system, is a unique voice. And that unique voice has something to say. And when that thing is said, it's information, it's insight, it's awareness that we welcome in and we use for whatever it is that is trying to emerge. So every single member has a voice, and that voice is very important. We talk about the system has the answers, or the team has the answers. Very much in the sense of relationship systems are naturally intelligent, generative, and creative, in that whatever it is trying to do, is trying to emerge, is trying to create, the answers lie within that system. And it's about creating those conditions to enable all the answers and the creativity to come and to flow in that. Roles belong to the system. I will unpick these in the next few slides for a bit more details. And roles are particularly interesting, sometimes very hard to comprehend and wrap around our head around it because of the mental mindset shift needed for this. But roles belong to the system. Relationship systems, we rely on roles in order to be able to deliver or do whatever it is that the system needs and the function that is needed, especially the executive functions in there. And like I said, I'll unpick that for us in a second. We also acknowledge that change is constant, and we are always in a state of flux of change, and the change is always emerging. So it's about how do we accommodate that in a way that enables everyone to be present, everyone to be confident and comfortable as best possible, right? Without making anyone wrong. Okay. So just a few things from each of those principles that we've identified. The systems entity. This is the bit that talks about each system is unique in its own right. So one of the things I want to talk about here to share about what the high level. These are all very high level things. I want to just give you a flavor. Just give you a flavor of what relationship systems coaching is about. Relationship systems intelligence. So the systems entity is a blend of the characteristics of the members in it, right? So every single member and every single individual person within a system, within a team, and even if you lift it at a macro level, at an organizational level, every single member of that system shapes and makes whatever that characteristics look like. So if you walk into an organization, sometimes you say, this is the culture of X team or X organization. It has not just come about just like that. Every single person, whatever they do, whatever they say, how they move, how they operate, how they be with each other, shapes that entity and that identity of what it looks like. We talk about when you shift your attention from the individual and focus on the system, then you see a solid, resilient, energetic force of the members of the group. And in that sense, they can lean into and find strength with each other. So it's shifting from individualism to the macro level of a collective, right? We talk about the collective being the unit. And when you're looking at that, you're looking at the beauty about the collective, the relationship of the collective, right? And it's about the relationship within that. It's just very high level of what defines the systems and the entity, but there's a lot more in that. And again, questions, we're here for the whole lot, so we'll take questions and everything else. The third one here, that each relationship has its own unique identity, which was on that slide that we spoke about. So I will not reiterate on this one, and it's very much in tune. The second principle about hearing, seeing, feeling, being the voice, holding the voice, each voice is unique. Every member, again, is a voice of the system, and it's unique, and it's trying to share information, and it's bring something to light. So every single voice is important and it's right. And everyone in that system, we hold the truth that this is seeing, every single person seeing parts of the truth. Yeah. And still that every truth is relevant and carries essential information. So if we talk about perspectives, and I have a perspective, there are things I hear, there are things that I filter through, there are my own biases that I have. The same goes for everyone. So whatever I say or I see or I hear, it is my truth. And in that truth, therein lies something, right? Be it whatever it is that is happening for me. So holding this view means every single voice and every single truth collectively forms our whole truth as a system. So we have this notion of everyone is right, but only partially. Right. And again, failure to listen to any voice means you are sort of marginalizing any unheard voices and really critical information. So everything we do and everything we try to bring to light and to life and to being is information, and it's insights and it's awareness, and it's vital, it's valuable information that we need to work with. And the system has the answers. We spoke about that being a very naturally intelligent and generative system. By bringing all the voices out, you can get all the answers and all the information. Conflict and chaos. They're not they're not seen or shunned or disregarded or discarded. In fact, there is a lot therein lies a lot of information when there are conflict and there's chaos. There are signals, we call them, and there are messages of something trying to emerge, something is trying to happen. So how do we facilitate and enable that to emerge? Relationship system intelligence or systemic coaching gives you the awareness and the tools and the possibilities to do that. And sometimes conflict, chaos, not sometimes, most times, very hard to face into, and sometimes very hard to accept or to be with conflict and chaos. Right? It's hard. It's not easy, but with the right tools, tapping into conflict and chaos really reveals a lot of insights. Just what we need in a system, for a healthy system, in fact. Roles belonging to the system. So every relationship needs two things. It has its own functional and emotional needs to be able to fulfill its existence, and that's done through roles, right? And we talk about people occupying these roles, but also the roles are not the people. The roles belong to whichever system that is. And this this is the bit that is quite hard to really sort of be with and sit with and understand and let it kind of go in. So roles, I'll just underline that. The system needs roles. The roles are, so the people occupy the roles, but the roles are not the people. Right? We talk about outer roles, which is very obvious and very clear sometimes, like a CEO, a mother, a father, an architect, right? Those are outer roles. It's visible. You name it, and then everyone sort of in that system knows what that role is about. Right? And then we also talk about inner roles, and the inner roles is the one that really takes care of the emotional needs of a system. The functional roles can be the outer roles. The inner roles, very critical. They also play the emotional needs, satisfy that. So for example, you might have peacekeeper, that's an inner role. You might have the devil's advocate, that's an inner role. You might have the joker, right? But these roles show up as and when it's needed. So they're inner, they're transient, and they show up as and when that emotional need is needed, and someone will step into that at that moment in time and then take off. Almost, we describe it as a robe, as a jacket. You wear it, and then you have to let it go. Right? Otherwise, it gets, things happen. It becomes in that system. It almost becomes as an outer role almost. Um, yeah, and the outer roles, yeah, that fulfills, as I was saying, the outer roles fulfill the structural functions of the relationship or the system, and the inner roles really satisfy the emotional needs. Um, this means this means any role or all roles can be fulfilled by anyone in that system. If you think about it, if roles and outer roles are defined by the system, and anyone can step into those roles as and when there is a gap to fulfill it, that means there is less attachment to roles or whatever that is. Outer roles, inner roles, we all carry, we show it up, and the system needs both to really be healthy and function. So we help bring those up, all that clarity and all that awareness as well. And as we all know, change is constant. Relationship systems or any system really is in a state of emergence and sort of current state, constant state of emergence. And it's about accepting. It's easier said than done because we all have our tolerances of change, and some love it, some don't. But the premise is to accept that change is constant. It's always happening. It's natural. We cannot avoid it. And it just comes from, sometimes outside it can get done to us. Sometimes it comes from within. We initiate it and instigate it. And that's the circle of change, circle of life. It's always happening. Um, where a team or a relationship system has really high levels of relationship system intelligence, RSI, um, uh, that conflict and disagreement and chaos piece that we touched on before is not seen as a pinpoint to pick an argument or fight, but then it's seen really as something is trying to emerge here. So we should tap into it. Um, so just want to essentially 5 RSI principles, very brief and very high level. There are a lot more in there. Just want to give you a quick flavor of how we do this, or how some of the examples what we've done with organizations and teams. So we work with various different sectors and different organizations and clients, teams, large or small. Um, thank you, Justine. Large or small, depends. It's wherever there is a system. You can work with a couple, relationship, a husband and wife, a mother and child, whichever, right? But that's the flavor of some of the examples we've worked with. Personally, I've worked with some African organizations in Uganda, in Zambia, some also emerging conversations in Ghana as well. And in those examples of leadership alignment, has been very much a this is that conflict piece where there has been misalignment in visions or ideas or emotions running high, and again those inner roles and needing to be fulfilled, where it's not been handled in the mature way that it needs to be, right? And working with those individuals in their system to really have the clarity and the appreciation and the acknowledgement that differences is actually really good, because bringing everything together, bringing everyone's voice together is not marginalizing anyone in any way, shape, or form, but in fact, we're welcoming it all. So leadership alignment examples, department alignments as well. Having worked with, I'm not sure, I don't think I can name any of the clients as such, but one of the largest UK financial sectors, and most of the sessions I did, I worked with them over a period of time. Again, it spanned across various different leadership alignment piece into also department alignment, where you have different change initiative challenges and difficulties there, bringing the various departments and people together to really co-create, align, appreciate, again, understand all that is needed to really get the common purpose that they are striving for and push for it towards it together. Teams, very much used. My day-to-day is working with teams and also just one-on-one coaching and coaching pairs. So a leader and their report, for example, might need some challenges that they're going through, and I'll work with them in that. But very much visible in the team dynamics that I operate in. So lots of flavor there. So I have Neri actually on the call. Neri is our CRR UK director. And I think she'll say a word or two and say hello and introduce herself. But this is who we are. Essentially, we're specialists in relationship and systems coaching. We, as I've mentioned, wherever there are relationships, wherever there are people, there is a system. There is a human dynamics that emerges there. And in those situations where sometimes it can get interesting, we really work with those systems in those challenging times to really get clarity and alignment, and to be able to really push forward through to a common purpose and common goal. I think I might be over 10 minutes, but I think that was all I prepared. Am I still in time? I can't see faces yet. I've minimized my videos.
Yeah, we can still see the
slides.
The slides, yeah.
Yeah, I've not stopped sharing yet. So how do you do?
Sorry, I thought
I haven't stopped yet. I don't know, Neri, did you want to say a word or two or anything, or and then we will say hello? Hey, there she is.
Hi everyone. You can see we come in relationship as well. Whenever we do some work, we're always in relationship. I suppose Kwasi and I would love to know if you have any questions from us. As Kwasi said, we work across sectors, industries, and in political groups, in the health sector, and primarily all conflict is about not being able to ask for what we need and not the relationship giving us the space to say what we need to be included. So any questions at all from us?
I think we're taking questions at the end.
Okay. Oh, right, okay.
Okay. Yes, so we're going to do all the speakers first, and then we open the floor to questions. Sorry.
Great. No, that's wonderful.
I forgot to mention that. So thank you so much for speaking. And thank you for delivering that in such an accessible way to someone who, and I assume a group of people who haven't heard of RSI before, but thank you. Next, we have Catherine Ward from Unison, who will be talking about employment rights and racial discrimination at work. Thank you, Catherine.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Catherine Ward, and I'm a regional organizer for Unison. I cover Hertfordshire, and I'm covering health at the moment in Hertfordshire, and higher education and police. So those are where my members are based. So first things first is that everybody is entitled to join a trade union. Unless you're self-employed, then you can't take yourself to court, really. It's really important for people to join a trade union because it's about somebody being there to support you when you're going through a disciplinary grievance, or if they're saying that you're not good at your job, so competency. I will start off with talking about why you have a right. It's a UK employment law, UK employment rights, where you can take a representation, even if your employer says they do not recognize a trade union. So you have a right for representation at a meeting with your employer during a disciplinary grievance or competency meeting. You don't have the right to take somebody during investigation stage unless your employer recognizes the trade union. So that's the bit that we can come in. But when it comes down to that, yes, they've done an investigation and they've found out that you've got a case to answer, then you have a right to do so. If they don't believe so, you can refer them to the website where it shows your right about being able to be represented at work in a workplace. So that's the first things first. Employment rights are your right to have in the workplace. So the policies that you work on means that the employer has to follow the policies. So your rights are being able to know, like when you start work, finish work, you're off duty in advance, when you can take holiday, when you can request holiday, things that are governed beyond an employer. So being able to request flexible working. I'm not going to go into all of that in details, but I will take questions because it's easier to narrow down. But I will go more into detail about your rights at work in terms of discrimination, because especially race discrimination, but the similarities in terms of timeframes for race discrimination, sex discrimination, and discrimination under the Equality Act. So anything under the protected characters, there is some similarities. So there are timeframes that you have in terms of law from the day of discrimination. So from the day you are treated differently, either because of your race, your sex, or your religious beliefs, from that day, you have 3 months less 1 day to report it to ACAS to be able to take it further. Doesn't mean that you can't seek redress through the employer, but it just means that if you do not report it to ACAS 3 months less 1 day, is that you might not have redress outside of the employer. So if you don't get an answer that you wanted, you might have lost your opportunity, or it makes it harder for you to take the case to employment tribunal. I'm not saying you can't, I'm just saying it makes it harder, because the law is that you have to have tried conciliation with ACAS, and then if that doesn't work, then take it on to employment tribunal. And I'm not saying that you always have to do that. It just makes that the process is simpler to do so that way. So what is discrimination? So it's you not being bullied, and if your manager is a bully and bullies everybody, that you can't take them and say it's racial discrimination, because there are managers who don't discriminate when they're bullying. They're very fair in their bullying. So that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that, for example, a simple, straightforward example would be that when you ask for a holiday, you have to jump through 10, 20 hoops to get that holiday. Yet your colleague, who might be of a different race, asks for holiday, just gets, yes, yeah, go for it. What do you want? When do you want it? And that's your comparator. So when you are going to ACAS, you need to give an example of, well, the reason why I feel I'm being discriminated against is because X over there asks for this and gets it, and when I do, I have to fill 20,000 forms. I'm being simplistic about this, but I'm trying to give you a simple example that people can follow. Another example could be, if it's sex discrimination, could be that your colleague gets promoted without interview or gets offered things, but because it's a male, gets opportunities that you do not get. So you would have that comparator to say, well, X here and me are the same, but he keeps getting all of these examples, or I get treated, I get the jokes like, you're going through the flush, my love, don't talk to her. It's that time of the month type jokes, that banter. It's not banter anymore. That's not professional, and that's not in the workplace. So it's all of those. But you need to remember, you have a time frame from when this has happened to you. So you need to remember that 3 months less 1 day, to report it to ACAS. I keep saying it because it's really important. There's people who could have got good redress through going to employment tribunal, who lose out of that opportunity, and they could be employers who could be held to account, who lose out of that because you haven't. And also sometimes employers are clever. They'll be like, yeah, we're dealing with it. We're looking at it, and we will support you and we'll get to you. And they'll push it because they know there's a time frame, and they'll push it until the time frame. It doesn't mean that while you're doing internal processes, you can't still register it with ACAS. You can, and you can mention that you are still going through the internal process, so you do not want to engage yet. But it just protects your right, and you can tell them that you want to protect your position in case the internal process doesn't happen. And also, when you do go to ACAS, they will ask you, what have you done internally? So it is important to engage with your employer, either through a grievance or through raising concerns. And I know people hear the word grievance and they fear it, but if I can say that the employer has different ways to challenge your work practice. So the employer can take you to a disciplinary if you've done something wrong, and that's fair and right. The employer can take you through competency if you're not doing your work right, and that's fair and just. The employer can take you through a sickness process if your illness or you keep getting sick, and they want to make sure that they're supportive, and that's fair and just. You, as a member of staff, one way you can get redress when things are not right with your employer is through a grievance. So don't fear a grievance. You can do it formally or informally. Most employers like to have that conversation informally. So you can raise it informally, and half of the time it resolves the issues. So when you go to ACAS to address the issues of discrimination, you would have try to raise it with your employer. But if you are afraid and don't feel strong enough to do that, you can raise that to say, actually, I was fearful of how my employer would act. So that's why I have skipped that internal processes. So it's understandable, but it has to be a good reason. The reason why I said at the beginning, join a trade union, is that we will be there to support you and handhold, and we will be there to guide you and to question what the employer has done, what the employer has put into place, and to also make sure that we are supporting you as best as we can and giving you the advice. I know people have had terrible histories with, trade unions, but most trade unions are supported and run by volunteers. So remember that the person you're talking to is a volunteer at the other end. So the stewards are volunteers, and they're there to support you. So it's about just giving them the opportunity, or asking them to say, actually, this is not working out. You're not giving me the right advice. Can I speak to somebody else, or can you pass me on to a regional official? And that can be a conversation that can be had. It's not an easy one, because each trade union works differently, so I can't speak on behalf of all trade unions, but I'm just saying that it's important for you to use that system and to have that people to handhold you through your issues and stuff. I'm trying to think what else to say, really, because it's difficult to speak blanketly, because I don't know whether I'm talking to people who work in the private sector, people who work for local government or public services, because there's differences in how your employment rights are treated by different employers. A lot of public sector worker employers have to follow quite stringent policies, and your rights are more protected. But I'm not saying that I'm not saying just because you work in public services, you are not going to be bullied. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there are more systems and balances and checks in place to protect you. Whereas compared to if you are working in the private sector, where, let's say for a private care home, where the owner is the nursing home, and he owns the nursing home, and it's difficult to challenge them because there is no higher up, but then you can take things out to the quality care commission if things are not going right. So there's always a way, but it's difficult for small businesses and stuff to challenge the employer, but you still have rights. And and until we lose the rights, if we do not fight to save them, then you still have employment rights in this country for now anyway. But yeah, we've fought hard. The rights we have, employment rights we have been fought hard for, and we have to continue fighting for them to retain them. So things like if you are in a job, you don't have rights for unfair dismissal until 2 years of being in the workplace. That was never the case before, but it's something that we've lost. And at the moment, we still have it, but it's limited. If you have a 0-hour contract, that means that you do not really have much employment rights. You have limited, but you have some, which it depends on what work you're doing and what we're looking for. But things like sickness benefits and things like that, you don't have. But you might have pro rata holiday pay that is accumulated depending on how much hours you do work. So it's a big area to talk about in across the board. So I just thought I'll give you a snippet of it from all angles. But the main thing is, if you're going through discrimination or if you feel that things are right, you need to look and see, okay, is this just happening to me because, one, am I black? Is it because I'm black? That question you should ask yourself. That really is important. And then you should look at to say, actually, how are my colleagues being treated? Because sometimes it's not because you're black. Sometimes it's just because they're a bully and they bully everybody. So you need to look that, and then we can look at it. And saying that they're bully doesn't mean they should get away with it. It just means that we should challenge it, and then it should be more collective. You should get your colleagues to come on board, and you should do it as a group to challenge that manager who's not treating you right and treating you fair. So there's things that we can do, and there's checks and balances. But the other thing you should always know is the policies in your workplace, your holiday policy, your I'm just trying to think what other policies you have. I've just gone all blank for a bit. But things about how time off, things about the jobs you do, things about training. You should know all of that, because a lot of that is how you should be doing your job, really. So if you don't know, if you're not guided, go and have a look at the different policies that you have in your workplace. It's not something that you get given at the start of a contract and then just put away. It's something that you should check, because if you're being asked to do something, you need to see if it's something that you should be doing. The other thing you should do as well is read your contracts, as well as reading your job person specification for your job, to just make sure that you're doing what you're paid for. And if you're not, then you should be then going back to the employer to say, actually, in my job, it says I should be doing A, B, C, D, but because you've asked me to do X, Y, Z, can we relook at how much I'm paid? Because if you're doing more than you paid for, then maybe you should be negotiating for pay. If you work in public services, there's systems in place to look at your pay and to renegotiate how much you pay. There is job evaluation processes that are looked at what you're currently doing and if you're being remunerated correctly, same as if you work in the NHS. There's that system in place. It's much more complicated in the private sector, but you can compare with other companies that are comparative to you, and you can compare job roles to say, actually, Bupa pays this, yet you are not paying that, and to negotiate using that, because you can do that as well. It's not easy, but I'm not saying it's not undone. A lot of the times, females, we do not look at that. We get added duties a lot, and we just do them, Half of the time, we don't negotiate money with them. And that's part of your employment law, negotiating money. So people tend to not think that, but actually it is important, because you should be remunerated for the work you're doing. You're not doing it for charity. So you need, unless you are, then maybe that's a whole different thing. But it's those conversations that we should be having, because then it brings up another issue of equal pay for females, because we don't ask when we get asked edit work, whereas our male counterparts tend to ask, not always, but they tend to, and so they end up moving up the ladder and we don't. And then there's an equal pay aspect, which is a whole nother conversation about your employment rights. So if there's two people in a workplace doing the same job, a male and a female, and the male gets paid more than the female, then you should be asking and you should be getting the employer to pay you fairly. I know this has come quite a lot in the public arena when we're looking at actors and actresses. They have been campaigning a lot on equal pay for equal work. So yeah, so thank you. I don't know, are you saying to me it's 1 minute, or are you happy that the campaigning? Okay. Okay, so but that is a right that we should thank Unison for, really, because Unison took the government to court on that, and I think we ended up in Brussels to get the equal pay, the first equal pay claim done. So it's something that we keep fighting for. So it's important to keep looking out. The other thing that you have a right to is to take your employer to tribunal, and Unison won the right again to remove the fee, because the government had introduced a fee to take your employer to tribunal. So there's now not a fee. So if you're not happy and you've gone through the internal processes and you're still not happy, you can still take your employer to tribunal. Another thing that I need to tell you as well is about pay. So if you don't get paid correctly, there is a timeline as well. So you have 3 months less 1 day to the day when you were not paid correctly. And if they then start paying you correctly, your time is ticking, because you could lose the opportunity to get your money back. So there's a lot of timelines that people need to be aware of, which are really important about making sure that you get your money, your rights. And I'm not saying that the internal processes would not solve it. I'm just saying that you need to be clever and be aware of this as well, in case the internal processes don't work and you don't get redress, then you would want to take it outside of the employer.
Thanks ever so much, Catherine. I think that we're looking to, we've got a couple of the speakers is all. We could listen to you all evening. It's so knowledgeable, but we've just got a couple of other people waiting.
Okay.
Thank you. So fascinating. My goodness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah. Michaela is going to email out her speaking contribution on Monday. So now we hand over to Sam. Thank you, Sam.
Myself. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Michaela and Amy, for inviting me to speak about this, because really sometimes we do not consider it as important. And it's really interesting what Kwasi was saying earlier on about its organization and about relationship, because you find that relationships are not static, they are changing. And but when we look at history of African people, of Black people, we seem to be static with it. We seem to be stuck to that of slavery, as if slavery is the beginning and the end of African history. And we need to really be careful, because really Africa is not just a continent, all right? It is made up of people of different languages. For example, just in Nigeria alone, we have about 270 different languages, and we do not understand one another. Yet when people are speaking of Nigeria, they will say, oh, do you know the man? I've met a man in Port Harcourt. Oh, and do you know where he is now? I've never been to Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt is about 800 miles away from where I was born. Okay? So that when we look at history, why do we really need to study it? I mean, that's the question that I'm posing today. And the question really looks at, in terms of the history of African people, you will find that if we want to look at all the type of things that have happened in the past, all the type of things that are shaping the way things are now, and the role that Africa could play in the global and national, and even in their own local relationship, then we have to really look at it carefully. And let's just look at it. For example, in Nigeria, as I've said, that we have over 270 languages. Mine is just one of it. And people speaking Yoruba from where I am, which is in the southwestern part of Nigeria, we are about 60, 70 million people. And yet, I mean, when you talk of Yoruba, people in England here say, oh, which dialect do you speak? Whereas when we talk of Finland, which is just 2-point-something million, we talk of Finnish people. All right. So that really sometimes we get things mixed up. And I think it's because the Western Europeans that came to Africa label everybody as if Africa is just one group of people. I mean, which is really something that we need to start to unpick, because when we talk of Europeans, British people, I mean, for example, even in Britain, we have the Scottish people, we have the Welsh people, we have the Irish people, and they do not sort of see themselves as just one group. So that we need to be very careful the way we do it. So let us just look at it. As I was saying earlier on, we find that the African people, they have history before the arrival of the colonial people, the colonial masters. So let us look at what happened before colonial masters. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, but Mungo Park, when he came to Africa, he came to River Niger, and River Niger, he followed it up to the Delta area in Nigeria. So I said, yes, that's good. But what did they say? People said he founded River Niger. River Niger was flowing before he came. So that we cannot say that he founded River Niger. Possibly he saw River Niger and then followed it, will have been the right way to look at it. And then let's look at those languages. I mean, for example, like in Nigeria, we have the Yorubas, and when the Yorubas speak, the Igbos do not understand them except if they've lived in the Yoruba part of Nigeria. So that when we look at it, we tend to demarcate them as say, oh, Yorubas are there, Igbos are there, and but they are the same. No, they are not the same. But what the colonial powers do, the colonial powers sort of put everybody together. And that then hides so many things that many people do not know. For example, like Yoruba people, I think, I mean, it's a kingdom, okay? And when you look at Yoruba kingdom spans from Nigeria into the Republic of Benin, into Dahomey, and then into southern part of Ghana, and even up to Liberia. So that you have Yoruba kingdom sort of extending to, that way. And then you have the Mali Empire in the north. Mali Empire is not just a Mali of the modern day Mali. Mali Empire extends into Senegal, into the people that are in the northern part of Ghana, and then you have people that are even up to Timbuktu and up to Tunisia and other parts of Africa, North Africa there, so that you have Mali Empire extending to that. Then you have the Ghana Empire, okay, and then you have the Songhai Empire, you have the Fulani Empire, and all those are kingdoms that spans across West Africa. But then in the East Africa, you have the same thing. So that sometimes historians or people that have been writing history about Black people, they tend to lump people together. For example, somebody who has been on one of the Zoom calls that I've been, sent me an email and said, oh, do you know anything about poets in the Caribbean? So I said, Caribbeans, I've never been to the Caribbeans. And so that the people tend to lump us together as if every Black people are just the same. And as such, it's really interesting what Kwasi was saying there earlier on about relationship. That is, everybody has a voice, but people do not listen to those voices. And the reason why people do not want to listen to that voice is because they know that if they start to listen to those voices, then they have to change some of the pictures that have been created by colonial powers. Let us just look at Africa. When we talk of Africa, people, I mean, for example, people state some educated people in Britain, when they are talking, they talk of Africa as if Africa is a country, which to me really tells me a lot about people's intellect. Because, I mean, you will never talk of England as the only place in Europe, or and I'm really sure that that's possibly why people fought to come out of Europe, because they want to really be independent. And there are so many independent countries in Africa. I think about 34 or so. I can't remember offhand now. But if we look at it, you will find that it's because people have labeled those countries as if they are the same way. Just look, for example, map of Mali. The map of Mali has a dead straight line. It's as if somebody, I mean, let me just bring about some of the joke that we used to tell in Nigeria. That is, European just sat in the 1800s and decided that this is cake of African map cake. And then they got their knife and started to carve it out and say, this is mine and that's yours, type of a thing. Because there is no straight line in Africa when you really look at the majority of the countries and how they are created. Then let us look at really what is it that possibly have been contributing to that. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's because people see Africa as being underdeveloped. But is it really like that? No. Because when we look at history, you'll find that, for example, in Burkina Faso, in West Africa, and you will find that people have found iron smelting ovens that are dated back to the 8th century BC. That's before Christ. So that's almost 10,000 years old. That people, I mean, that people have been doing that. So that when we look at it, people will say, but is that Africa? No, it's not. I mean, for example, let me give you another example. I'm very sure, sorry I didn't prepare PowerPoint, but because I do not want to hide behind PowerPoint. I'm talking about my people. And my people, for example, in Nigeria, we have our sculptures. But when people from Europe came to Nigeria and they saw those Yoruba, especially like Benin sculptures or Ife sculptures, people said, oh, the Europeans must have contributed to this. But when they were dated, the dates precede the coming of the Europeans. And as such, we cannot say that any European had any contribution to that. But when you want to put people down, then you say other people then did that, which is part of possibly the racism that is going on. Let us look at it again. For example, in Nigeria again, when we teach children not just how to drum, we teach them how to dance with that drum. We teach them how to sing with that drum. We teach them how to play musical instruments. And as such, when you look at it, all those things that we do, the Westerners will call it creative arts, but we do not call it, or then the people will separate it and say, oh, it's painting, oh, it's dancing, oh, it's music, so that we just take it as a way of life, because that's way of life. Because you will find that when we move as if we are dancing. When we play drums, we do not just beat our drums. We use the drums to communicate with people. Okay, so that you cannot just say, oh, Africa is just one. Africa is not just one, because it's made up of different people who have their own cultures, who have their political system, who have their own sort of ways of governing one another before the coming of the Europeans. And then, I mean, I would just like to end with this, because how do we teach people our culture? We teach children our culture by inviting them to participate in it, not just by reading books or by doing this. So that when, for example, I could just remember the way that my dad did it with me, that my dad didn't sort of say, sit down, I want to teach you about Yoruba culture. He demonstrated it. He showed me. Then I participated in it. I was involved in the dancing. I was involved in the music. I was involved in the telling of our story in the way that have been passed to one another. And by doing that, I started to develop my own identity. And I'm glad that my identity is quite different from any other person, because I can say, this is Sam. And Sam is from Nigeria, and Sam is a Yoruba person from Nigeria, rather than just saying, oh, Sam is an African. Sam is not just an African. Sam has roots that spans so many cultures. And because I traveled around Nigeria, and also I was able to have a taste of those very different cultures in Nigeria. So I will end there, but I mean, if people have questions, then I will be able to answer people's questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Clap. Now we can open the floor to questions for all three of our speakers. So if anyone has questions, raise your hand using the chat with the raise hand function, or put it in the chat where we'll pick them up. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please ask them.
I've got, I've got so many questions. I can't find my Zoom hands for some reason. I've got a question. If anyone else has a question, please put their hands up. But is it okay to go, Amy?
There's one.
Yes, someone has a hand up.
Okay, yes, go ahead. Yeah.
No worries, Michaela. I'll wait. I'll go after you.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Bless you. I wanted. Oh gosh, I've got so many questions. Okay, like so many.
Okay, in that case, should I just ask mine because mine's one?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Firstly, thank you for inviting me, and what a selection of speakers we have. Really, really insightful. So thank you so much. My question is for Kwesi, and it's about roles belonging to the system. So my question is, how does one, or can you provide any tips for one to manage not constantly adapting the inner roles, and making that permanent? Because you said the roles can be interchanged, and that's something that I, for one, struggle with. I'm always the peacemaker. With us, I would appreciate how to kind of come out of it without attaching it to myself.
Yeah, that's such a great question. Thank you, Mercy. Yeah, I think some of the practical ways to do this. Apologies for the noise. The kids are some reason they just want to play with Daddy right now, and it's not bedtime.
Yeah,
yeah, some of the practical ways, as you're saying, I love the way you're looking at you, because it's something you can control. Because usually sometimes it's hard if you're seeking to help others, they may or may not want it. So with you, in terms of some of the things that you could actually try, looking at your inner roles that keeps coming out, and I'd like to also commend your awareness of this, right? Because you're aware of it and you want to minimize that. Because again, as I said, if you always do that, then your team or your system will know that, oh, Mercy is always the peacemaker. So when Mercy is not here, it's chaos, right? So that then becomes almost your outer role in the team, as on top of the other roles that you do. Sometimes being aware is the first step, and that's why I really wanted to commend you. If you find yourself wanting to step into peacemaking, right, I will invite you to potentially just keep practicing, but just notice yourself maybe just about as you're about to do it. Sometimes you would end up doing it. But when you recognize yourself, maybe then take a pause, take a moment, take a deep breath, and then notice, and then, okay, just keep quiet and step back into whatever it is that you were doing, or in that moment or in that stance you were before having to step back into that peacemaker role. Because as you recognize it, as you're saying, it might be a bit of a habit for that system you're in, so it might be hard to control it right now. But the first step is that recognition that you have, that awareness piece. You might also work with someone in the team or someone that you know within the team as almost like an accountability buddy, saying, look, this is something I want to sort of help the team more of, because I've recognized this on myself or of myself, that I like to always kind of step in and make peace all the time when I feel it's needed. You might want to accountability buddy in your team saying, hey, look, if you notice me wanting to do this all the time, please nudge me, help me be aware of it all the time as well. So potentially two approaches there that you could try. It will help. But all of these are on you, the accountability buddies, finding someone who is willing to do that for you and also be observant and aware of you in that sense. So that might be tricky, but mostly with you doing all by yourself. So it might be a bit challenging without having a coach to work with you in
it
that
is
a bit more detail. Right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
But yeah, do reach out. I don't know if Neri has any other thoughts or anything else. If not, but do reach out. We can help explore.
Now
further.
I've got the details. I wrote them down. I was like, yeah, I need that. So yeah, thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Michaela, no one else has got their hands up or asked the question, so it's over to you now for your questions.
Hi, sorry. I was trying to type them up so I can put them in the chat, but if no one else is there, then I'll pose my questions. I've got quite a few. I'll start off with Kwasi, as Kwasi was first. My first question is, how can organizations devise steps to ensure partnership relationships are maintained?
Wow, great question. So partnership relationship, I actually had the organizations working with partners and how they operate, how they align, and how they work together and be with each other towards the same goal. So the question, how can organizations and their partners maintain their partnership? Kelia?
Yes. So I just want to get that right. How can organizations devise steps to ensure partnership relationships are maintained? Okay. So that's basically the initial maybe even before you even make steps to build those partnerships. What steps can we take to ensure that those relationships are maintained?
Wonderful. So there is something we do that we have. It kind of spans across multiple layers. It's called a design alliance. So between organizations, between parties within organizations, or even between teams, you can use this between teams. You design what we call a design alliance, right? And it has multiple layers in this. One of the layers is looking at, okay, one entity, the other entity, what is the culture that we want to work best in? Yeah, when we are working at our best, what does that look like? Right. So that's the first layer. You co-create that between both parties, organization and partner. The next layer down is looking at, okay, so life isn't perfect. Life is challenging. Life is tough. All things happen. Things emerge. Change is always emerging, and it is with us. When things get tough, how do we then want to be with each other? Right? How do we want to operate? How do we want to hold each other in this space or in this relationship that we are in? Right? So you co-create again some components there in this alliance. And then more the wrapper around it is then asking the question. So how do we know we have, say, for example, how do we know that we've got this great, when things are working well together, all of these things that we might say. Say, for example, one organization and a partner might say, okay, when things are working great and we're in tandem, we have wonderful collaboration. We're swimming in the sea of collaboration. Right? Everything is open and everything is transparent. So that's great. Everyone aligns, everyone nods. Yes, is this something we all want? Because you have to check in that this is something that everybody wants, right? If that's the case, when you wrap around, how do we know we are all swimming in this pool of collaboration, right? So that's the evidence procedure of knowing, okay, if we have these, then it means we're swimming in the pool of collaboration. So that wrapper, and it's same for how do we know that we're being with each other in a certain way that we've designed as part of our alliance when things are tough, so that we have clarity as a whole, as a system. And again, I mentioned that everyone has to agree to whatever alliance is being designed, because that's the essence of the voices being heard. Because if the dominant voice says, okay, we want this, we want this, right, and not everyone is aligned, then imagine something emerges and it's like, oh, but we said we were going to do this. Well, you said you're going to do this, right? And that's what creates those kind of unwanted energies and challenges. But that's one way to start with. But naturally, there's plenty of things that you can also do. Once the alliance is in place, it's not done and dusted. Constantly working with it, checking in, making sure that that's still relevant. Anything's changed, we have to realign and redesign our alliance and keep evolving it. It's a living relationship alliance, which is a living relationship bond thing that teams use, organizations use, parties or partners within organizations, wherever you have two entities, really, or where systems want to be created. I don't know if that's helped or answered it a bit without bombarding too much. There are so many things that we do in this space, but yeah, that's one way that I will start to kind of help shape that system and that relationship.
Okay, thank you. I did put a second question in the chat, which is for you. I've got tons for Catherine, so I hope she's ready. The second question for you, Kwasi, I had was how would you advise building trust in or before starting relationships?
Wow. So first off, what comes to mind or what showed up for me was in that relationship, that word trust would mean different things to whoever is in that relationship. So getting clarity of what does trust mean for you, what does trust mean for you, and then getting all those voices and those inputs in. Then once that's clear, you have insights, you have awareness, you have some ideas of what trust means for both parties, you can then really facilitate that conversation. And again, sometimes trust depends on who the individual is. Some people like trust to be given or earned. Some people just give it, right? So also having that clarity of, okay, what does trust mean for you? How does it look like when there's trust in a system? Right. So there's really lots of coach-led or even awareness-led facilitated conversation, being really open about these words and not just taking words for the face value of it. Just be curious about, okay, you said trust. What does that mean for you? And what does that mean for you? And then getting those insights in really then starts emerge something. It starts to emerge conversation. It starts to trigger various threads of clarity and co-creation. And once you have that, you can then create a whatever it is that your system creates. Because again, as we said, each system is unique and different. And one system might create a mechanism to build and improve trust, which might not be equally relevant for another system. Without giving straight answers, because I know each system is really, really difficult to give you something straightforward. But as a starting point, that's where I'll start. I'll get curious about the word trust for your system, invite voices in to share their thoughts about what trust means for them. When there is trust, what does that look like? How does that feel like? How do we embody it? How do we walk like when we have trust? Right? You can get really creative with this. And then create, okay, if this is what this looks like for us, how do we get there? What do we want to do? Steps to get to that. And then you can really create something.
Okay. So would you suggest for organizations when they're either starting something new, whether it be a new project or just starting the organization itself, that can be this conversation which embodies what you've just said, so we can understand everyone's relationship language? Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, you can understand the system of it. Yes. Yeah, I would highly recommend before you start anything, really design some sort of alliance around it. What does this thing that we're about to embark on, what does this look for us? What does this mean for you? What does this mean for you? How do we know that we've got it, whatever that it is? What does it look like when we get there? What is the environment we want to work in? What is the culture? When it's great, what does that look like? How does that feel like? How are we being? Right? When it's tough and we are sort of starting to really get into what is called conflict, but as we know, it's insight, it's information. How do we then want to be with each other? So definitely, if you're starting anything with a team, with an organization, with a partner, design this sort of alliance, really have alignment and clarity, because that interpretation and perspectives will kick in if you don't have that. We will make up stories, and then those stories will then dictate behaviors in us. But if you just talk about it, then you have openness, transparency, and clarity.
You're brilliant, Kwasi. You really are. He's amazing.
Thank you.
Maybe we can copy and paste him, sell him in Tesco's.
He's amazing.
Well, I would like John Lewis, by the way. Not oh. I'm kidding. I don't mind.
I'll let someone else ask questions. I've got a ton for Catherine. So
Does anyone else? No one has their hand up, and no one's put anything else in the chat. So I'm thinking, Michaela, you can ask your questions.
It's me. 50,000 questions. Okay, so Catherine, hi, hello, welcome.
Hiya.
Thank you so much for your wonderful contribution.
Thank you
So
for
first,
inviting me back.
yes, I personally didn't know much about Unison and what they do, and I'm so grateful that you came and enlightened us today about the work they do and how they can actually aid the Black community in a lot of things that we struggle with, like everybody else, I suppose, because we're all human and living in the same space. But I have 5 questions for you. The first one is, what productivity have you found within those that report issues?
So if depending on where you're reporting the issues and why. So if it's a workplace issue and reporting it at work and you're going in by yourself without support, it's very limited in terms of support, because the employer is thinking, you and whose army, basically. And if you report the same issue with a trade union on board, and not just Unison, but because if you work in Tesco's, you have a different trade union to us. But if you work in public services or any services that is funded by public money, you can be a member of Unison, or most services, I should say. You can be a member of Unison. But it's, if you walk into that room to report an issue and you walk in with a union rep, the employer will stop and think, because it's now not you and whose army, it's now you. And if you're Unison's 1.3 members, and it's Unison with its access to solicitors and resources to be able to challenge the employer. So it's the questions depends on who and where you're walking into. It's very difficult when you're walking into a private employer, but doesn't mean it's not doable. So when you walk into the nursing home and they've been mistreating staff, it's harder to get the results. But because Unison has resources that paid officials can focus on, then it takes longer, but it happens. Sometimes not always satisfactory, but to as our best to within the law what we can do. So a lot of small businesses or private employers, I give an example of care home because it's easy to explain away. So they usually fire people before 2 years, because of your employment rights. It's why you've been fired, whether we can take it to the next level. But sometimes they can get away with a lot of things because we've lost that. It used to be you only needed to be in a job a year before you had employment rights. So one of the things that people need to think about in the future is to vote to get those rights back. So to campaign and get the different what you call them, I've gone blank, like Conservative Labour, to be putting that on their manifesto and for us to be voting back for them, to our employment rights. So it is about that. So yeah, sometimes I walk in and without saying a word, we win. And sometimes it takes a long time. I've just had a recent win today that I got results on for 2 members of staff who work in NHS, who've been doing a job since 2015, and the employer has finally agreed to backdate the pay, but they've been fighting this since 2018. So it depends how it's not one size fits all, and sometimes we bluff away a lot and stuff. So yeah. I don't know if that answers you.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. You mentioned that you think that everyone should register with the union. Could I ask why would you advise that?
Okay, so I'm not saying unions are perfect, but I'm saying that when you are going through a process, even if you are a solicitor yourself, even if you are good at doing things yourselves, when you're going through a process, you get emotionally involved. So your thinking process is reduced, and without a witness, a lot of things can be said. So when you join a trade union and you walk into the room with a witness to the process, people tend to re-evaluate how they say things and how they do things. So it's about having that witness in that room with you, to make sure that, one, what's said is what was said, two, policies being followed. So when the reason why I became a trade union was steward was because I went through a situation, and when I walked into the room, and the person I walked into the room with didn't give it all, but at least they were there. So they took minutes. They were able to remember things that were said. But in the end, I felt that I needed to do this for other people and stuff. So it's about having a minute taker who's not the employer, to make sure that this is what's being said. And also somebody who is saying, actually, your policy does not say that, so why are you doing that? Because when you are going through the situation, you don't remember, you don't think through, oh, what policy are we going through? Or why are we here? You don't ask those questions. You think it's okay, and you just go along with it. And then the next thing you know is you're being dismissed, and you're like, how? So it's about having that person who just gives you checks and balances. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, brilliant. You mentioned ACAS, but I didn't get what ACAS was. Probably everyone else did, but I mentioned, what is ACAS?
So, I don't know if the abbreviation for ACAS, but so in this country, if you want to take an employer to court, you have an employment support service, both for employers and for employees. So ACAS is that body that is government funded to do that service. So they give you advice on what a policy should look like. So they have examples of policies. They give employers guidance on what they should do. So, but they also do the mediation between staff and the employer when you can't agree. So they offer that service. So that's who ACAS are. So you can ring ACAS. I think I've put a contact on how to get hold of ACAS. When you Google, just make sure that you are going to ACAS itself, because a lot of conciliation service, that's the word I couldn't remember. But when you do, make sure you go to ACAS, because there's a lot of solicitors who have made themselves look a bit like ACAS. So just make sure you look to see it's the www.acas.gov rather than the solicitors and stuff, because that's a free service. It's a free phone number. You can send in a question to say, I wanted to go on holiday. My employer has said no. Can they do that? And they would, give you some advice. But, so they offer that service, but they don't go into the room with you, and they're not there for you. They're there to just offer a conciliation between you and the employer. Whereas the trade union will go into the room with you and sit with you and just ask the right questions and make sure that you're getting the answers you need, if any.
Okay. Last two questions. What advice would you give to creatives or contract workers or the self-employed? You mentioned actors and actresses. A big part of BVL is the creative aspect of the Black voice. Sam just mentioned why that was. It's a huge part of our culture from the very beginning. And I was just wondering, there are a lot of obviously actors of.
So for actors and actresses, you have a trade union there's two I know, and I always remember and I can't remember the second one, but there is a trade union for you. So they do a lot of people in your business. So you can be part of a trade union in that as a creative, because it's about somebody who, if you're good with it, it's fine. But it's somebody who knows how to look at your contracts and make sure that you get breaks and make sure that you're not being, taken advantage of, because it's easier or for people
equity one of them. Are they?
Yes, that's the second one. I knew there was two, and I know Back2, because I've done some work with Back2. They've done some some drama and things workshops for one of my other previous lives, as you know. But yeah, it's about making sure that you as a musician and your rights are not, or actress or actor are not being taken advantage of. So your what's it called, intelligence, because it's your thing, intelligence, things that you make up are yours, and making sure that nobody else takes advantages of it and claims it as theirs. So they join them and be part of that, because unless you load it and can afford your own entourage of employment and entertainment lawyers, then fair enough. But if not, then that is your next best thing, so that your intelligence does not get taken advantage of and used willy-nilly. And yeah.
And the last question is, how do you find out if you're being paid less than your worth? So whether you're female, or maybe just because you're black, or how do you find that out? Because I don't think employers post their how do people find that out? I always wonder.
So nowadays you can ask for freedom of information. So they don't have to name who's getting what. But if it's a small company, you can always minus to say, actually, this I know. Oh, so you can always do ABCD on that. To know how you're worth, you should Google jobs that's similar to yours and compare with your job to see, actually, if somebody else is doing my job in that. Yes, thank you. The Apple intelligence, intellectual intelligence. Sorry. So yeah, you should Google your job, and you should ask. It's kind of gone in the past where you weren't allowed to ask your colleagues how much they earned. Nowadays, ask, oh, how much are you on, and stuff. So that's. You can ask, but Google yourself, Google the job you do, check and see, compare with other jobs and see, actually, okay, so somebody else is doing this job and is earning on this money. And actually, yeah. And if you're good at your job, you can use it as to say, actually, I'm going to go to the next door company that will pay me this money that I'm worth. But if you are in a trade union, the trade union can always ask for that. Big employers have to publish their data, so how much they pay the different, like women, males, and stuff. The pay gap agenda. So they have to publish that. So yeah, but yeah. I was trying to read the question.
I think someone's got a hands up or something, yeah.
So we have Mercy with her hand up. I just wanted to also just point out that Kwasi mentioned that Glassdoor is good for the transparency of wages, just to bring the commentary in. But I think let's go for Mercy's question.
I second Glassdoor is really good. So my question is for Catherine. Are there, it's more of a generic question, are there some issues that a trade union cannot assist with?
Not really. I always try. So Unison's got some issues that we would avoid. So if a member has been found and it's difficult to say, because it depends on the situations and why. So we as a member of staff, if you work in the caring industry and you've been accused of a safeguarding issue, it's Unison does support you and does go through to police station with you if you have to have an interview with the police. So you get a solicitor at that interview, and we've known sometimes the police saying, we'll come to your house, the solicitor will come to your house as well for you to be interviewed and things like that. It's very difficult to say what we wouldn't do. I know that there is a moral question of somebody accused of child abuse, and it's really the extreme version of child abuse that if they're proven, that sometimes we as a union do step away from that. But there's not a lot that we do not try and support. Because you pay your membership for a reason, for support, and we're there to support you. But then there's times when we walk away. So if I'm advising you to say, this is what you need to do, and you keep going doing the opposite, or if you then engage somebody else to help you, we can stop away, because it's very difficult for you to be managed by two chiefs. It's, they say in Africa, too many chiefs spoil the broth. So we don't want to spoil it. So we give you the option to say, actually, if you've got to, if you are wanting to go with that no win, no fee, go with that no win, no fee, because we do not want to fight with that. So if you're a member of Unison and you're getting advice from us, then we want you to stick to us. But then if you're then having advice from, everybody else and stuff, and then keep coming and saying, oh, well, but everybody says this, and we say, well, go with everybody. So that's kind of when we say no. But it's very rare for us not to do a case, especially if it's employment related. But if you've been fighting in the high street and beat up people and you get fired for that, it's very difficult to support that. Depending on why you were beating up people in the high street.
Yeah, of course, isn't it? All right, thank you. No, interesting, because earlier on I had a conversation with someone, and they said this is to do with whistleblowing, and they said they felt they couldn't go anywhere because they were working in a police department, but they felt it was just too much of a big system corporation for them to actually go forward with anything. So I just thought I would just check that.
No, see, there is a whistleblowing policy within the police, because I cover Herts Police, and I know that they have a whistleblowing place. And if they are afraid to be the whistleblower, then they can come through the trade union, because one of the things that we now take very, very seriously about whistleblowing is because we were cited in the Mid Staffordshire inquiry, the hospital where there was a lot of, so Unison and other trade unions were cited for not actually standing up. So we as a trade union have taken that on board and make sure that we do protect and be allies to people who want to whistleblow. So we recognize that we should have been maybe stood up more in Mid Staffordshire, and we didn't, and we recognize that. So we do take that seriously, because it's important that if there is a problem, let's out it.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make a comment to Sam. Is when I first came to this country and I was called African, I used to turn around and say to people, European. Because Africa's a continent, so if you're calling me by my continent, if that's the deal, that's what we do. Just thought I should share that.
I have a question from Kwasi. Sorry.
It's no question. I was actually going to make a statement also to Sam and to say thank you for the wonderful touch on the history and the desire to really keep delivering our history into schools and everywhere. Really, it's a real reconnection. Hearing what you shared today, for me, it really hit home. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Kwasi.
Yeah.
I think we've got a question from Quinta now.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much, guys, for inviting me. This is my first time attending. Thank you. Yeah, I live in Stevenage, Hertfordshire, so that's why when I saw it, I thought it's a good, community to join and to just, hear and gain some knowledge and insight of what we're going. I've been in Stevenage or in Hertfordshire for the past 17 years, and I've been I'm running my own business care agency in Hertfordshire. So I'm faced a lot of challenges when it comes to cultural understanding of how we set up a business and how we run. and dealing with the local authority when it comes to, the care. Some of us, the care providers, really the small and black care providers, who've had a lot of challenges. And I think if this is a sort of forum, or that we can come and have that conversation, because something that's really deep in me to discuss, or to talk about it, and how we can deal with the situation. And most of us black, smaller providers and black providers, we're afraid to talk, to come out and have this sort of conversation, because that's our own source of living. Most of the time when I speak with my colleagues and friends, they're like, no, we don't want to talk about it, but we face a lot of discrimination. So so how are we going to talk? So I was just trying to talk. Comment on Catherine as well when she was talking about the unison and the staff, because as a smaller provider, you've got your workforce that you keep, and you're struggling to make ends meet. And sometimes when those staff, they see the bigger provider, they want to run to that provider. So bring it or introduce, because the UNICEF is something that I want to introduce, because as a company, we want to be as transparent as we can. But again, in the health sector, in this health and social care sector, the staff just move from one organization to another, causing a lot of disruption in the workforce. So if as an organization, how can I go about it, to support my staff, to encourage them to work, to, join the UNICEF without, compromising also me losing them at the end of the day, because they can be very vicious sometimes, I tell you, the care staff.
So one of the things that might give you an edge in terms of getting your contracts from local government would be to actually say you recognize trade union. That means that you are brave enough and your policies are robust to be able to withstand working with the trade union. So we could look at getting local recognition with Unison, and you can highlight that you do, because I know a friend set up a cleaning company for schools, and one of the reasons why most schools go for her company was because she has recognition with the trade union, because she's saying that I'm rubber stamped by a trade union. I'm willing to, if my staff have got issues, we have a forum to engage. So the working with the union is not saying that we are coming to be telling you off. We are a critical friend. So we are telling you when things are wrong and when things need to be right. And we're telling you them before they need to go down a disciplinary. So we could be having regular meetings every 3-4 months, the staff and you as the employer, to say, this is what the problems are. And then you can go off and sort them out, because that's what it is. The relationship is about building that connection. So it's not about actually always adversary. It's actually a critical friend to say, actually, the reason why A, B, C, D are upset is because, one, maybe you do not put the rotas out in advance enough, or maybe when you change the rotas, you do not give people notice, or the phone systems, the communication is not working. So that's what we're there for, is to provide the communication. That is the main job of a trade union, is to make sure our members, your staff, are happy, and you as an employer are happy. We love that when things are working like that. It's just providing a communication, because sometimes people are afraid to go to the employer and say, this is not right, but they can tell us and we can come and tell you, because we don't fear for our jobs. Whereas some people think, if I tell you what you're doing, what's wrong, you would think, oh my God, I'm going to fire that person, because that's what people fear. And the union gives that protection. So it's about going back to what Kwazi was saying about relationship, and that conversation about building that relationship. So the union, your staff and us, and building that relationship, and having our own communications and stuff, and trust. And that's what happens when we set up a recognition agreement. It's, you say, we will meet with you so often, we would work with you. This is how our staff will bring up a complaint or raise issues. That's what it is, and that's what the relationship is. And if you see the good companies, they all have recognition agreements with trade unions. It's a very American concept to not like trade unions, but America is kind of different. The companies that are coming in from America are the ones that tend to not want recognition agreements. But if you look at all the, English-based businesses, most of them that started here, all do find it easier because a happy workforce is, a productive workforce, and that's what we want as trade unions. I mean, we're not the stereotype of what you see on carry-on films where everything is down, everybody is out. That's used to be in the past, but modern, it's about a happy workforce and just, yeah. So I'll put my details in the chat and let's talk.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, because I think as well as an organization, we were registered with the Care Quality Commission. That would be something great for us during inspection, because sometimes they ask what other outer organization that you work with and how do you support your staff. And I think to me personally, I don't mind, to be honest, whichever if the staff are all registered, but it's just how we can work with you guys and without compromising as well, losing them and retaining them. So that's why.
We can ask that question, why are you leaving? And we can always ask them, and they will be freer to tell us, and we can give you that intelligence to say, actually, this is why they're going to company XYZ.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Sorry to interrupt you there. The next question, I think we've got another hands up from the Apple Inc. Stream. So if you have your question, that'd be great.
It's a great name.
Are you there?
Yes, I am. I couldn't unmute myself. To Sam, Catherine, and Kwasi, thank you. What knowledge you've all got, and very insightful. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How may we address you?
Oh, Sonia, sorry.
Sonia.
Sonia, sorry. I'm Sam. My parents are from the Caribbean, and there have been many times somebody's always said to them, do my parents know somebody called, let's say hypothetically, Elizabeth in Kingston? I'm thinking, Kingston is a massive place. Kingston's a massive place. How many Elizabeths are in Kingston? But hey, I just think what you said today is gorgeous. Thank you all.
Oh, thank you.
So there was a question in the from Michaela in the chat, Amy. Or should we come to you first? What would you prefer?
Michaela asked me to ask the next question, so I'll ask.
Okay,
So Quinta, please can you put the name of your business in the chat so that we can platform it through BVL, and just platform it, because that's what we'd like to do. Please. Thank you. Options Healthcare Services Limited. Thank you very much. And then Michaela's question in the chat. I don't know if Will or Michaela wants to.
Michaela, do you want to just go for your question?
Okay, hello, me again. Sam, what steps can be taken by the educational institutions to promote the value of Black African history in British education system and to British society?
Thank you for asking that question, because it's something that I've really been working on. I mean, if you look at that, it's not just in the history aspect that I've been fighting for. I've been fighting for it in terms of the whole curriculum, because as I was saying earlier on, we have contribution, not just in our history. We have contribution in our culture. We have contribution in our technology. We have contribution in the way that we govern, which I'm very sure that the British people can learn from. But because they are short-sighted, they think that they know it all. And as such, they see us as primitive. Whereas we've been governing ourselves before even Britain became a place to live in. So, so that, and they need to know that, so that what I'm pushing for, not just in my school, with the AQA, that's an exam body, I'm on their two committees, the research committee and the quality assurance committee for the curriculum and assessment quality committee. And what I've been pushing for is the introduction of Black elements into, sort of bringing it in, the inclusion of it in the curriculum, so that we can celebrate it, because we tend to look at Western aspect of culture only. And whereas if we look at it, because Sam is not going to go anywhere. Sam is not going back to Nigeria tomorrow. Okay, if that's what God wants me to, I will go back. But as at the moment, I have no plan. My children are here. They were born. They were born in Nigeria. We came here. They found their own roots here. I cannot just uproot them and say we are going back to Nigeria. So that I'm not going to go back to Nigeria tomorrow. What can Britain do in order to show me that I am a person in Britain? They need to include my culture. They need to include my way of life. They need to include the way that we sing, the way that we dance, the way that we play our music. They need to include that into the curriculum. Because as a teacher, that's what I'm fighting for. Because I'm very sure that if our children have a taste of that, they will see themselves as part of Britain, not as elements that are just rioting every day. Because we are part and parcel of this land, okay? And to me, we need to really immerse everybody into that, not just Black people, the white people as well as everybody. And as such, I'm really canvassing within the NEU, because I'm in the national, thank you, Catherine, for all that you've been saying, because I'm a representative just like you within the NEU. And that what I'm pushing for is that NEU I'm planning now to take it to the conference so that it becomes a motion, so that then we can then fight it out that way. And then my union will then take it to the government. I'm taking it with the exam board as at the moment. And if the exam board and the union are taking it to the government will have to say yes. So that's what I've done so far. So, and then they said, why is it important to promote the value of African history in the UK? We are UK colony, most of the African countries. And if UK is not promoting it, then UK is not really promoting its own history, as far as I'm concerned. So that UK need to promote it, we need to promote it, but everyone needs to promote it. Not just Black. To me, it's not our responsibility. For example, I'm not learning my own history now, although I still sort of go to look at some things, because, for example, I do not know much about Ghana. So sometimes I go into books to find out more about Ghana, because I want to know it, because it's part of me, all right? But do British people see it that way, that some of those colonies are part of Britain? I mean, look at the way they treated our people with Windrush. They went to Caribbeans to bring them here, but then the children of those people that came here on British passports are now being shipped back to the Caribbeans, saying that they are not British. So that, to me, it's not by shipping people back, it's by making them to really feel valued in Britain. and then which really will be the true history of Britain, because the history that people wrote before Floyd, let's put it that way, is really not proper history. It's tainted history, so that we need to rewrite all those history books by really pointing out our own contribution and bringing it to be part and parcel of the British history.
Thanks so much, Sam.
Thank you.
I think we've got, sorry to
Hands up.
long, but we're running out of time, I think. There's a couple of questions. I think Quinta was first. Let's just go for Quinta.
Okay, sorry, it's me again. Yeah, it's just a question to Sam. It's something I know it's not really historical, but it's something to do with our culture, African culture. I've got a child that is special need, and I think sometimes when I go to the hospital for her care, and the doctors don't really understand where you're coming from an African perspective to look after that child. Yeah, so sometimes we have a good fight just for them to understand the cultural aspect of my cultural aspect and where I'm coming perspective, where I'm coming from. So how would you educate someone in that? Because what I also realized while I'm in hospital, I had a lady as well, a friend, that the child suffered from sickle cell anemia. So she always visited the hospital, and sickle cell is something is African, from Black, and Black culture. So, and sometimes they don't understand. And she told me most of the time that she comes to the hospital, go back, they send her back home, and that child has a crisis again, she has to come. So she didn't have the voice really to express herself. But my case was because I'm in the health and social care. I understand the policies, I understand the procedure, so I can really bridge and give them some of the terminology that they need to hear, and and bridge that gap. But someone from how would you educate, or how would you say you can educate someone from our culture for the healthcare practitioner, especially doctors from other background, to understand us, when the disease and our culture, when it comes to that? How can how can someone go about it, to educate them? Or how can you educate, or what would you say that we can be able to educate them on that aspect?
When I first came here, just like Catherine, and people asked me, which type of houses do you live in Nigeria? So I said, no, we do not live in houses. We jump from one tree to another. So, so they thought that it was like that. Some of my students, when I met them in the town, the traditional marks on my face, I told them that I fought with a lion, and that's part of my initiation. So, and some of them still think, 30 years on, they still think that that's true. So that when and I now teach some of their children, so their children are now asking me questions, saying, is it really true that you fought with a lion? I said, oh yes. So don't mess around with me. So that, to me, sometimes we need to joke about it. I know about sickle cell, and I know of somebody that has really suffered from that. So I can really feel your pain about it, that people are not understanding it and they are not treating it. But you need to continue to tell them that this is not just ordinary pain, because it's not. And some doctors that have gone into that have studied tropical sort of illnesses will know about it, but majority wouldn't. So that what you can ask them to do is possibly for them to contact some of the people that really have, because I think it's in London and Liverpool that they have hospitals that are specialists in that area, so that you might get referral to those hospitals, so that your daughter or the person that is really suffering from that will really be addressed properly. because they will just be giving ordinary painkillers, and it's beyond that. So that, and the only people that will really know about that are people that are involved with the tropical diseases. I mean, that would be my advice to you, to seek a referral to that hospital rather than just sticking to Lister Hospital.
Yeah, the thing is sometimes because it's hard because when you are in the hospital, when you're doing admission, there's really little that there's really less time, and you're so overwhelmed with the condition of your child. Yeah, is that you don't want to, and you have to, let people understand that this is, yes, I understand that this is what the government, or this is the red paper, so this is bureaucracy, there's certain things, but culture wise, the amount of cultural incompetence that is in the health and social care, the amount of negligence, and I think most negligence comes as a result of not knowing and not adapting and not learning, and to learn to accommodate other people, but just going by the books. So that's really hard on people like some of us that have got special needs child. It took me years and years and years for people to understand that this is how I want my child to be cared for, to be looked after. And it's just so lucky that I'm in that sector, that I can explain myself, and I can be forceful about things, because sometimes they would take us as if you're just an African woman that is very, aggressive,
emotional. Yeah.
Exactly, not knowing that this is it until I had to. When I'm in the hospital now, I don't ask for junior doctor, don't come by my bedside. I don't look for register, I look direct for decision makers, because I need that decision at that point. Because my daughter, she's epileptic as well. When she's having her seizures, one time they left that child for 6 hours without that attention, and I was just trying to get the doctors to understand. So it's really hard sometimes culture wise to explain to them if they are also in a really defensive and in denial. And and I think also they listen to me because they know I'm a biomedical scientist by profession, and also I'm a public health. And so I did public health. So from that, then running a care business. So there's that vast amount of knowledge and expertise in my side that they can listen to me. But when you see other families that they're not listening because they don't have that voice, it's really, sometimes disheartening.
Yeah, it is.
Is there any more hands up? Is Catherine, Mercy? Mercy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. It's more of a legacy, Hannah, because my question was for Sam, but he answered it. I was just wanting to know if this agenda is being pushed further, and he just, he answered that. But in addition to Sam's advice, and also, Quenta sounds very expert in her own field. The organization I work for, there's a lady, she is a Black lady as well, and she runs a peer support group for sickle cell parents and children. I don't know if you've heard of her. Her name is Daniela Brooms, and I will put you in contact, Quenta. I've got your details. I'll send you the details. She's brilliant, and she's a Black woman, so she might have an understanding, although by the sounds of things you're very expert in what you do, but nonetheless it's just a group of support in addition.
Mercy, can you pop it in the chat? Because we have had a couple of parents inquiring along the lines of what Quenta has shared today. So it would be really helpful to share that if you could.
Will do, thank you.
We're going to have Mercy back to talk about the wonderful that is Mercy very soon, because she's also a very, very accomplished and qualified soul. So we will have her back and you'll hear more on her. Catherine, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to make a comment about making complaints and getting the complaints logged through at the hospital. I'm trying to remember if it's the PALS, the service that you can register, because it's important to log this and to then for us to be able to chase it up, because it is reported in the race data that the hospitals do pick up. So there's employment side, and then there is the public sector side as well. So it's important to raise it. A lot of the times we walk away and don't make the complaint. But those complaints are important in terms of helping things get changed, even though at that time it's not immediate, but it is important. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Quinta just asked a really important question, I think. Oh no, was it Justine? Justine, yeah, I think asked, for those in healthcare, what would you do to change these issues to do with inequalities in healthcare provision? I'm assuming it's for those in healthcare. Anyone in health? Mm-hmm.
Can I make a plea? There's not enough Black people who sit on the health boards. So that you have your CCG, you have the hospital, you know, we need Black people volunteering their time to sit on these boards. And there is registration you can do on the government website where you can register to sit on the boards. So it's very difficult to, because some of these boards are appointed by government and you have to have registered. So it's very difficult for us to have people who then make change if we're not there. So we're not at the table. I cover Watford Hospital, Hearts Community Health Partnership Trust. I cover Hearts Community Trust, CLCH, all the hospitals locally. And I can tell you that I don't think I've seen many Black people on the boards. And I'm looking at the face of a lot of professionals, a lot of people who can bring something to the table, who should be on the board. So please register and register your interest. So sometimes boards do take people on who are not directors, but who are assistants, who they help. But register your interest. I will, if Michaela reminds me, I'll find the link and share it for people to do so. But if you go on your Lister Hospital Trust Board, if you look, there will be a link on there on how to become a trustee and things like that. So we need people to take on these roles because we're not on the table. Same as in education, we should be governors. There's also that same system in the health system, and they also have advisory committees. They will have a cultural committee at least. They will have, where they will have public engagement. So there's an equalities group in the trust. So I'm new to Lister, so I'm still finding my feet as soon as I know. But if people do know who leads on it, please share, because you need to be on those boards to be consulted and to make changes. I know when I'm with Bedford, which is where I'm from, I have been part of that conversation. And yeah, that's how we can change things. We have to sit at the table.
I just also wanted to share that BVL are putting together a dossier. So these meetings are just not going to be us just talking about these issues. The things that are being discussed here, the space is primarily an issue solution and gosh, I've forgotten I've forgotten the test now, Amy. I've forgotten it. Help me. What is it? Issue solutions and productivity, isn't it? Sorry. Sorry. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Issues, solutions, actions. Then productivity comes after the actions. Yes, but you were close.
Yes. My mind was somewhere else. So basically the space is not just a talking space to talk about the issues. After we've talked about this, we then invite people from those said sectors. They come and they apply the voices to their position, basically, because one, we don't want to have a meeting with them and they're saying, oh, we would love to speak to Black voices, but we're just not finding them. Where are they? We had this space is primarily to bring those leaders that that are from those potential spaces, put them in front of Black voices, and to actually solve the issues, and not just create initiatives, but to get productivity from those initiatives. So when that's happening, we as BVL, as a platform, are putting together this a piece of literature called an accountability dossier, which will be a compilation of all our meetings, so that it can be accessed by those different institutions, businesses, individuals at any point, so they can use it as a resource for when they're putting together policies, dealing with the Black community specifically, not the wider, but specifically to have our voice be heard, to ensure that what we're saying here is not going to be lost. Every contribution that's contributed in these meetings, whether it be one voice, 2, 3, or 10, 20, 30, is ensure that that it will aid solutions for the Black community. So that's our action, our ongoing action within this space. So we're presently fundraising for that. It's going to cost about £5,000 to get that project up and away. I think Amy shared a couple of the links to the fundraiser if you'd like to fundraise for that. And I'll pass everything over to Amy.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone has it. There are some hands up, but I don't know if you already asked the question that your hand is up for. We are running out of time. We're over time, but sorry, I can't tell. Justine, you have a question? Maybe a last question?
I have a comment. Yeah, thank you so much for this awesome meeting. I have my badge on, sorry. Yeah, I'm always thinking about action, and I was about to ask that question, that we sometimes we talk to the converted, like when we meet, we talk about these things and we are already there. And for me in my head, I'm like, the people who need to hear these things, they are not here. So that was going to be my question. How do we get this message to the people who need to hear it? So thank you for mentioning what is being done and what's going to be done for that to happen. I work with Hertfordshire Community NHS Trust, and there's quite some work going on there. Catherine, you've been to us. Thank you so much. It's good to see you again, and you're coming back to us soon. So yeah, this is great work, and I believe we will continue to work together to make Hertfordshire more inclusive and more equitable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to, sorry, I'm just getting my thing up. I just want to thank everyone who contributed and spoke today. This has definitely been one of my favourite meetings that we've done since we've started doing these monthly meetings like last year. I think everyone is in agreement. That was a really good meeting. The speakers, you were brilliant. And I'm really excited to hear from the people who have joined. We've had quite a lot of new people here at this meeting, and it's been really amazing to hear all of your voices. So Black Voice Lecture is committed to action. If you've been delegating action today, please follow through. The minutes and recording of this meeting will be sent to everyone, provided that we have your email. So if we don't have your email, you can just put it in the chat now if you want. We look forward to seeing you at the next meeting, and hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Great evening.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good evening. Good night.
See you soon. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.